Welcome to Young and Awakening, a podcast for and about spiritually awakening teens. I am Helen Knight, and I am delighted to have with me today Michael Vladeck. Michael has worked as a counselor, coach, mediator, educator, and trainer, as well as a course leader in the field of personal transformation and relationship dynamics for the last 30 years. He does heart-centered work rather than head-centered work, focusing primarily on couples and families. He guides teens and adults into heart-centered awareness from which they can break through limiting beliefs and make more empowered, conscious, and loving choices. He helps people relate to themselves and their emotions with gentleness, compassion, and enjoy deeper communication and connection. And in his own words, you're a completely, utterly, and exquisitely perfect example of a human being. Like all of us, you're doing the very best you can where you are in the process of healing and unfolding. That just brings tears. Really beautiful. Thank you. Welcome, Michael.
Thank
Delighted to
you.
have you here with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love what you're doing and bringing, and I'm glad to help out for sure. It's great.
Can't wait to hear what you have to share with all of us today.
Mm.
So the first question I have for you is, can you share a little bit of how you came to do this amazing work that you're doing with teens and conscious parenting?
Yeah. It really started when I was a kid, and it's not so much that I struggled as a kid, although I struggled immensely as a kid, which helps me relate and really remember what that was like. But it's just understanding struggle and how to work through it and realizing that so many people don't know. So kids don't get the support they need with things that they could work through a lot easier if they had the right support because the parents haven't gotten the support,
Right.
right? And so my reason for working with families with teens is so much that a lot of parents aren't really going to do the work until things are hard with their kids.
Right.
Then they're like, okay, I'll do the work,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
left up to their own devices, they've gone this far without doing the work. And so kids are really the medicine the parents need to finally look at those parts and learn how to model being an integrated human being, learn how to work with emotions. Yeah, you're upset and you're bothered, but are you just throwing that towards your kid, or can you process that, recognizing your kid's in a process, they're doing their best, they're at where they're at. So the drive for it is really helping people wake up to the power we have and how we get disconnected from that. And then that allows us to see as kids that what's happening for us is actually really useful, even if it's painful and challenging, to help us learn how to work with things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so that was really one of the big motivations. It's that, and also I have an ability to work with a lot of people at once, like in a family, and
Yeah.
it's very simple for me. It's not, because some people it's overwhelming to have like 5 people in a room. For me, it's the same as one person, just the way my brain works and how I work with it.
Yeah.
But I think too, the other piece is having gone through so much, struggle in my life. I was suicidal till I was basically 19. Didn't have friends till I was 13. Felt incredibly alone in ways I didn't even realize till I was an adult, actually, that I was still carrying with me. And so, going through those kinds of experiences, and many, many more, of course, um, really set me towards being a student ultimately from the school of life.
Yeah.
I've done some trainings, but ultimately how I do this work is from learning how to listen to what's happening.
Yeah.
That's really it. Um, and haven't gone through cancer for 8 years and a bunch of lots of other things which we could of course get into, but it's helping people have a relationship to what's happening for themselves. And kids are in such an amazing developmental stage, that teenagers specifically, that I really am drawn to working with teens and with adults heavily. So
My goodness, this from my as we dive into this, I realized there's just not a lot on offer for the teens.
yeah.
So It's just so brilliant that you're doing this.
Mhm.
And because of what happened to you as a teen, is that part of your driving force of why you're doing what you're doing today?
It's more, I mean, from a child, it wasn't just teen, but it was the driving force is helping people heal. That's the driving force, helping people really get that there's no problem happening. Things might seem overwhelming. They might inspire anger, sadness, rage, insecurity, apathy, suicidal ideation, um, judgment, criticism. Sure. And that's really hard, but technically it's not a problem. What it really is the result of certain forces coming together to create that belief, that perception to go, oh, that's why I keep thinking this, or I keep doing this, or I can't stop myself, or that's why I keep getting into these relationships, these kind of things. That's why I'm stuck in this thing with this person or stuck. And so helping people have a relationship to those forces to go, okay, so that's why this is. So what do I do about that? And then what I really do is I teach them how to work with it. Because my main thing is I'm a teacher and a
Yeah.
guide about how to work with it. That's it. Nothing's wrong with people. They're just human beings and we all get kind of twisted out of shape and we believe things that aren't true, simply put. And that's the driving force is helping people wake up, to how beautiful they are and how powerful they actually can be once they understand how to reconnect to who they are, reconnect to their essence.
Beautiful. And I have a question because you work with the parents and the, is it teens? You work with younger than teens or mainly teens?
I typically work with teens. I mean, I will work with younger, definitely occasionally.
Do
That
you
certainly happens, but yeah.
do you notice like do the kids get it quicker than the parents? Like especially the kids that are coming in nowadays, are they quick to like, oh yeah, it's like more than the
Yeah, I would
adults?
say, I would say with my work specifically, because you ask other people this, they might give you a different answer. But for me, the people who get it more quickly are the people either who are more humble and ready and really tired of what's happening and recognize what I'm doing isn't working. I need help,
Yeah,
right? Those people tend to get it faster because you may be sick and tired of what's happening, but you might not be sick and tired enough.
right.
Really be open,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, I'm so sick and tired. I'm like, yeah, but you're still going to keep doing that thing, right? And so I would say in general, that's number one. But number two, adults have been more entrenched for years and years and years of these patterns, and there's overlapping patterns, right? So they get kind of locked in a certain way of being. Kids generally, you just kind of show them the way, like, oh, wait, so there's actually nothing wrong, and that makes sense, and oh, and so kids, a lot of people say, oh my God, working with teenagers, that's so intense, it's so hard, and
Yeah.
um, it's not my experience
Yeah.
at all whatsoever.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, because that's part of why we're Matilda and I have created the Young and Awakening um, podcast, and eventually will be the platform. Is exactly what you just said. Is we want to support and show them a different way right now as they're teens instead of waiting until they're adults, and then you again entrenched. Got a lot more
Yeah,
programming, a lot of more layers to undo. Let's give them the tools now.
that's right. I
Yeah.
mean, in fact, the vast majority of adults I work with will make some kind of comment like, oh, I wish I knew this when I was younger. I can be in a
Yeah.
workshop with 200 parents and I teach them something. And one of the lines I'll say is, sorry, no one taught this to you in fifth grade. And people have a strong reaction to that. Like, yeah, that's crazy how simple this is. What a difference would have made in my life. And I can't believe I never learned that till now, you know? And so teaching kids that, it's like, this is going to save you a lot of grief,
Yes.
stress.
Yes. Yes. Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what we're about. Wonderful. Okay, my next question. What do you see that teens in this day and age really are needing to help them thrive?
Well, in this day and age, you have to consider the environment they're growing up in. And having worked with people, especially teens, since before really cell phones existed, you know,
Yep.
literally before they were a thing,
Yep.
at least the small version that people carried with them. One of the things kids need is to learn how to use the only power they actually have, which is where they focus their attention.
Yeah.
Because the exposure they have to, social media, pop culture, all the marketing mechanisms that are billions and billions and billions of dollars are poured into it with very sophisticated, network of psychologists, et cetera, to try to pull your attention towards something else. Most kids are very pulled away from themselves at a developmental age. That's really, really horrible. It's damaging in a very fundamental way. And so one of the things, it's helping them learn that, well, first be aware they're not choosing where they focus their attention most of the time. It's being pulled someplace that just feels enticing, but it's like, if there's two versions of you and one focuses there all the time, one focuses on, let's say, something else that means more,
Yeah.
which one of those versions would you actually trust more? Which one would you think would be a better friend? Right? Which one would you connect more with? They're always going to say the one who can choose where they're focusing. So part of it's regaining focus, right? Because the digital age is really intense on that, even for adults. But the other is reconnecting to essence, because I think a lot of parents and teachers, they don't do really an adequate job in helping kids stay connected to the impulses and the essence they have. Because if it makes a classroom or a teacher or a parent unhappy, it's like, can you just not be doing that thing? Even though there's something to be said about understanding how to behave when there's other things going on, it starts dividing kids from their essence. And then, of course, we have kids who are mean, and we have people, that, are part of experiences that are painful. And being little animals, mammals, what we do is we want to be optimized for survival. So we're constantly assessing what's going to make me be more received, more loved, more secure. And I'll do whatever will be, because I'm a mammal and I want to survive, that's going to give me that. And a lot of those strategies separate us from our essence. And so it's a big thing, is reconnecting kids to their essence and trusting what's happening for them, learning how to work with that, and regaining their focus.
And when you do that, do the kids, this is probably not language or a tactic they've heard much about. When you teach them, do they come to it with really oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah. There's a lot of light that comes in for them,
Yeah.
right? It's like, oh,
right.
Well, I didn't even know, like, for example, I was just talking with two brothers who have had a horrible relationship forever. And I told the mother, like, I just need a session with both of them. In one session, it got like 80% better, because I was able to work with them and like what was happening. We had one more session and they haven't had conflict and they've been connecting. That was in 2 sessions.
Yeah.
And so what's important about that, like how I made such massive change occur for them, isn't about me. It's about how intelligent we are. If we're aligned with that, we actually make shifts really quickly. So for both of these guys, they're like, oh, right, that's me. And that's why I'm doing it. And that doesn't actually work. And here's here's what I have to deal with to avoid doing that. And it's actually doable. And I can train myself pretty simply, because the brain wants to be optimized in the highest form, survival of the fittest. Our nervous system is like, give me whatever's going to make me the most optimized. So I'm feeding people what it takes to get them aligned with the intelligence they have. So yeah, kids very quickly are like, oh, and a lot of kids say, I'm teaching this to my friends. I hear that a lot, because it's your friend's struggling and you're like, I actually know a way to work with that. That's pretty simple.
Beautiful. Love that. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
I mean, just for example, we're not designed to get stuck in negative thinking and negative emotions. We're not designed to just stay stuck there, but we do get stuck there.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so when you understand how to work with that, you can get unstuck rather quickly. And sometimes it requires deeper work. If there's been traumatic events, you know, you have to get to the root of that. But even when you do very precise trauma work, people can heal very effectively because the brain's like, oh, I don't need to keep holding on to that. Not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. You can still be aware and learn how to deal with those things, but you don't need to hold on to that fixation that's now affecting how you move in life. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Love that. All right. And since you've been doing this for the past 30 years, have you, I don't know if you've been working with teens the entire time, but have you noticed a shift in the teens over these 30 years? I mean,
Yeah.
the digital world that is now
Yeah,
all the same.
totally. It has been for the entire time. And it's been nonstop, right? It's been full on nonstop, like, yeah, a lot of time. The things that have changed, and by the way, science also backs this up in all the studies, but before I saw the studies, it was obvious to me that it was happening. There's more anxiety,
Yeah.
there's more depression, there's more medicated kids, there's more insecurity, there's more suicidal ideation, there's more suicide. There's a lot more, even more than ever, emphasis on the external. And that's partly because the constant impact of, let's just, if we just, I mean, there's different aspects of technology, but social media is a big one, huge one. I mean, imagine when we were younger and there we are, the teenage, you know, Helen, teenage Michael, there I was with my mullet. And, you know, let's say it's a summer day and you're walking through a field of people like in bathing suits. And I'm like, okay, I'm 16. I need to try to like look as buff as I can in my 16-year-old way. And you need to look as sexy as you can in your 16-year-old way. And just walk that anxiety of like, how do I look? We would turn that on in that moment. But now kids are always basically camera ready. Do you remember kids would go to school just dressed how they got out of bed? I mean, that was common. And now kids are, everyone's camera ready. Everyone's, you know, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The number of college kids, for example, who are getting collagen lip injections or breast augmentation, right? And even high schoolers, parents are supporting that. It's because on one level, they're being really heavily exposed to these very made up people who get a lot of following, like, oh, well, that's what I got to do to be liked.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, how about now? How do I look now? How about now? Do people like me now? Did I say a cool enough thing? Did I post a cool enough thing? Did I get enough likes? And as long as you keep having that stimulus, it develops neurosis. So there's a more neurotic way of being. And even though you might know that that Instagram influencer or that Snap, whatever, or that, you know, profile has been curated. It's the right pictures, edited pictures, the right things to say, the right, you, even if you do think that, and most kids I don't think really consider it as much, you still drink the Kool-Aid and you think that's like better than you, or yours has to compete. It's a natural thing because teenagers are at a biological age where whether they're ready to have kids or not, usually they're not, but they want to reproduce, right? And that's biology. I need to be attractive to people. So it plays right into that. And so that kind of comparison, am I outcompeting my rivals, right? Am I better positioned than my fellow teenage dudes or teenage girls?
Right.
So what happens is it develops a very big insecurity because you're not settled with who you are. I mean, for example, if you look at addiction algorithms, and when you see your Snapchat, and a lot of them use these addiction algorithms, there's like 6, 7, or 8 of them that are designed to keep you addicted and keep hooking you in away from your life into that. One is If I don't have my phone, I won't continue my snap streak I have with this person. And that snap streak makes us feel special and better because we have consistent days with each other. So again, there's all these layers and ways they create an anxiety that you have to focus on something outside of what's truly happening in here. And if you're present with it, what occurs? It's very like, if I go out here, it's going to be okay. So yeah, of course there's more anxiety, depression, et cetera, of course, right? And so that's, I think, one of the biggest. And then the digital age just creates a very scattered brain. It's sort of like if you take a mountain lion,
Yeah.
and you put it in for 5 years, put it in a zoo.
Yeah.
The brain has to adjust to the zoo environment. It's still a mountain lion, but you then set it free in the wild, it's not the same animal. It's not as sharp as it was. The brain adjusts, right?
Right.
And so our brains are adjusting to the speed at which things are happening, like looking at your phone, 150 times a day, let's say. What that's going to do to you is it gets your brain to develop kind of like a web browser. It's a lot of information. You watch 30 YouTube videos or more, you don't really remember much of any of them at all. So your brain starts developing to be more superficial and literally more scattered because you can't stay focused on one thing for a long period of time. It's very difficult to. So much so, yeah. What's that?
The ADHD scenario.
Right, right.
Wow.
And there's also a thing, it's like there's ADHD and then there's people who just can't pay attention.
Right.
They actually are not the same.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because ADHD is so misdiagnosed, it's insane.
Yeah.
I work with people who have ADHD and then I work with them and they no longer have it. That's different,
Yeah.
right? They never had ADHD. They just could not focus and they were anxious.
So Michael, that is like so huge, what you just shared.
Massive.
What is that? What's the best way, some ways to support them? Because it's everywhere.
Well, see, here's the thing. The thing is, most kids just are like, I'm fine, I'm good. I want to be on my phone 7 hours a day. If you take it away from me, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm going to hate you. That's, understandable. They either don't realize the impact or they do, but they don't really care, which is appropriate for most teenage brains to not care about the bigger picture. That's actually somewhat legitimate developmentally. And so it's a combination of things. One, on some level, they got to learn how they got to learn. And maybe they got to fall down a pretty dark hole. That's just real.
Yeah.
That's just real. And we want to plant seeds as adults to help them get, oh, there's ways to work with this. So there's that.
Okay.
Part of that is educating kids to go, hey, listen, you may care and not care, but look at these documentaries, Screenagers, Social Dilemma, tons of documentaries and videos about the impact of this on people's lives that are pretty convincing. And maybe they go, oh, wow, so it is bad for me, but it's so addicting, but I feel like I'm missing out. Yeah, and here's how you work with it. I think a lot of people go, hey, I watched Screenagers, A Social Dilemma. It's great. But do your kids know how to work with the overwhelming urge to keep getting on it? Even though they know better, it's addictive, right? So it's planting seeds.
Okay.
Another thing is having parental authority, I mean, for the kids watching this, like the truth is a lot of your parents are not great at being loving authorities. They might be loving, but they might not be stepping up enough because they're afraid of conflict with you. Right. And that actually damages you.
Yeah.
Or they're authoritarian, which is like, I don't care what you think and feel and need, and here's how it has to be, kind of old school.
Right.
That's not that effective either, really. So it's a lot of it's helping parents learn how to step up in a bigger way to create boundaries, and the kids will totally be pissed. But every single family I've worked with where it was extreme behavior, I mean, like not just the kids were bothered, the kids were off the rails, all of them start to reset and they feel better. I mean, for example, for any kid who ever...
off the rails in the sense of when their phone was taken away?
Yeah, yeah. It's like I was talking to a friend recently, and his daughter literally wants nothing to do with him anymore because he wants to limit her phone.
Yeah.
She's 7 hours a day just in her room.
Right.
He wants to limit it.
Yeah.
She wants nothing to do with him. She doesn't want a relationship with him. Right. That's extreme.
Yeah.
Or kids will say, "I'll kill myself,"
Right.
or "I'll hurt myself if you take it away."
Yeah.
That's extreme. Yeah. So there's so much of that, and I think ultimately, I forgot where I was going with that just before, but the the uh, the reality is that the kids who lose their phone, this is actually what I was going to say, the kids who lose their phone, the kids who break their phone, and the parents do take it away, let's say for a month, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Every kid who loses their phone for a month, literally that I've ever worked with, that's a lot of kids,
Yeah.
I mean, individually, if I worked with 1,000 kids, solid, like probably a lot more than that, but they'll say the same thing. They say, it's actually been nice. It's been frustrating and annoying, but it's also been really nice. They'll say both, right?
Yeah.
Because their nervous system starts to relax, and parents are like, oh my God, my kid is like talking with us, or they're like engaging with their siblings, or they're getting outside, or they're playing sports again, or they're playing their musical instrument, or they're doing things, it's like, and all that happened was they weren't barraged with all that stimulus all the time because the brain never evolved. It never evolved for that level of stimulus. So if you give it that level of stimulus, your system gets overwhelmed and all these crazy things happen, right?
Yeah.
So it's really has to do with breaks. And you tell a teenager, hey, I think you should take a break, like 1 day a week, and then every month take 3 days off.
Yeah.
Most will never do that. It's too addictive. They'll feel disconnected. And so it's tough because it's really up to the parents.
Yeah.
And this is where kids are like, I hate Michael. That's insane. Right? Naturally, I would probably think it too. Absolutely. Of course I would. Yet it's the truth because the kids that do it are like, oh.
Wow, that's really wonderful to hear. Yeah.
Like when I work with a family who, the kids are, pretty strong screen addict, which is most kids, but, and the kid, let's say they're flipping out because we're talking about limiting it in a certain way, not getting rid of it, just limiting it in a pretty balanced way. Then the kid can be really agitated, super duper, like angry, rageful, which is what you would expect with an addict brain, right?
Yes. Right.
And just to say that an addict brain is defined by brain scans, and the brain scan of a cocaine addict looks similar to a screen addict in terms of the areas of the brain that produce and release dopamine. People say it's like digital heroin. Well, technically it's like cocaine. So if you think about a cocaine addict, that's a messy situation. That's why kids are so absolutely insane about it. It's literally that addictive. Wow. And remember, there's numerous algorithms that are created to lock people in to that addiction. So the front part of your brain that goes, you know what, I should probably chill right now and not get on my screens. Yeah. No, they know how to bypass that. So even adults who go, I shouldn't do this, and they keep doing it, it's because that's the algorithm, right?
Wow. Okay, so that you've already given a bit of for my next question. What are parents missing in terms of being more supportive and to connect to their kids? So you're speaking about some boundaries, right? Limiting the screen time. But
well, I think what they're missing is on one level confidence. Remember back in the day, parents like, nope, you're done. Absolutely not.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Parents don't do that now because they're afraid of being authoritarian like their parents, but they're confusing the confidence of being an authority with being an authoritarian. And so parents are just not confident. It is wild. Because, for example, where I was going before is if a parent does set a boundary and then they make this agreement, the kid who's flipping out, a week later I talk with the kid, I'm like, so how's it going? They're like, it's fine. I'm like, say a little more. What do you mean fine? Because last week you were pretty pissed. No, it's not that big of a deal. It's a little annoying, but it's actually better. It's easier. I'm less stressed because my homework's done. I'm actually seeing friends more. I'm doing more. Every kid says this.
Um,
And the kids who don't say it all have the same thing in common. Parents who aren't holding the boundary. Because what parents also have to do is they have to understand, and sorry, teenagers, if this bothers you, but it's true and you'll notice it. You have to get past having all this understanding with your kid. Why? Because the kid doesn't care about understanding. They care about getting what they want. So the parent has to have understanding. And what does that do? The kid then tries to manipulate the parent and being like, no, you don't get it. You're the worst parent. No one does that. You know, the parents are like, it's like, yeah, at a certain point, validate their feelings, get it, go for understanding. And at a certain point, it's not about, I had to talk with my kid and they totally understand. So they're just going to be chill with their phone now. And like, no, that's not how that works. You're looking at, literally $1 trillion industry that relies on keeping your kids' attention. So parents need confidence. They need skills, which is the thing that I certainly teach, right? Is how you go about it without power struggles.
yes, right.
Because parents don't want to deal with it because the power struggles are so horrific and it's just damaging. There's a way to do it without power struggles. And yeah, there's a period of time, it's not a magic wand, where the kid's pissed and then it starts to change. Parents have to be able to endure that. They have to have the maturity to do that. To go, okay, so this is going to suck for a bit. Yeah, it might. It might be 4 hours.
Yeah. Right.
It might be 40 minutes. It might be 4 days, and maybe it's 4 weeks. But it shifts. So I think that's part of it. It's the confidence and it's the education on how to do it skillfully. Because I work with a lot of people who've seen 3 or 4 therapists. That's kind of who comes to me. And one of the common things is, oh, we've tried screen contracts, they don't work. Oh, we tried blah, 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 doesn't work. It's like, yeah, you just weren't getting the right guidance. It works. You just weren't. So then I explain to people and go, oh, that's the missing piece. I'm like, yeah, that piece right there. Without that, so there's certain nuances.
And then when the parent is strong with this limiting the time, right? It's not about cutting it off, limiting. Again, the kids are calmer, they're more engaged. Can they then self-regulate, or is it the parent? I mean, I guess it did, 13 versus a 17-year-old, but is there?
Well, it depends on what else is going on, because is their brain less stimulated? Yes, generally it's a lot less stimulated. If they're comparing themselves subconsciously, a teenager, I mean, think about it. You walk into a room and you're seeing your friends. On some level, you're already assessing who you feel close to, who you don't, who you have competition with, who you don't. It's subconscious, meaning it's not what you're normally thinking, but the nervous system, because we're mammals, optimized for survival, is tracking that.
Yeah.
Right? So when you take all that stimulation away, they start to self-regulate a lot better, but most kids don't know how to self-regulate because our society has told people to basically avoid feelings because being vulnerable is lame, right? Being vulnerable is how you get present. How you get present is with discomfort emotionally, or what your mind is doing to create that. And your nervous system is designed to process that really fast. That's the deal. So if you teach kids how to regulate themselves, yeah, then there's a whole other layer to it that makes them much more powerful. Taking screens away in and of itself will not address the insecurity that they have because they don't think they're enough.
Right.
So you take a screen away and now they just feel like they're missing out more. Right. See, it's not enough. For some kids, it is. Confident kids, it's actually enough. Really insecure kids, taking the screen away, you have to do something deeper. And a lot of parents think if they take the screen away from their insecure kid, that's enough. No, it might make things worse. So there's, there's a lot more layers to it, but just keeping it at that.
Can you just, in a nutshell, like teaching them self-regulation, like what does that look like? Like, how do you do that?
Well, let me say it this way. So if a mountain lion, go back to the mountain lion, the mountain lion is chasing a deer.
Yeah.
And the deer is running for its life. And the deer outruns the lion, listens and looks around, it's safe. For that nervous system to go back from the fight or flight back to the balance, the homeostasis, it takes anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. Quick. Because the faster it gets back to balance, the faster it's ready to track and listen really carefully to what's happening. If it stays in that fight or flight, it's focused on basically running, so it's not focused on tracking. So we have the same exact capacity in our nervous system, but our brain's more developed. So we have all this more advanced thinking, right? And if the deer had our brain, it would be in the forest, 40 years later, being like, oh my God, there's a lion in the forest. What's wrong with me? How come I don't pay attention to that? Wait, they're faster than me. Do I suck? Wait, how come, are you judging me? It would be tripping out all the time, like people do, basically,
Right.
But the deer doesn't have that.
No.
So it just resets. So if we are listening to our mind, we're going to keep looping. We have the same thoughts that create the same feelings, that creates the same experience we don't like. So what do? Well, I go back into my mind but I'll have the same thoughts ultimately, because every thought and belief we have, it's made up. It's conditioned. So we're merging with our mind too much. And most of the thoughts we had today, we had the day before and the day before and the day before, right?
Right.
And most of our thoughts on a daily basis are garbage. They're not actually that useful. It's only a small percentage that are.
Right.
And so for self-regulation, integration, we have to first create a new relationship with our mind. It's a great tool. It's just a wrong tool for the job for most of the things you're using. You have another form of intelligence, which is really hard for people to grasp when I just say this, but it's your body. And when you get present with your body, like the deer who doesn't have the mind, the nervous system will get you back to balance really quickly. So part of the teaching is how you can connect into the physical sensation of the intensity you feel, which is literally electricity in nerve cells. It will not hurt you. That's all.
Yeah.
And when you sit with it, the mind's like, shouldn't we be doing something? Okay, that's the mind. If you stay with it and you're learning how to be, not do, but be with it, very quickly, the nervous system, 30 to 90 seconds, you'll notice there's a shift occurring.
So this is a technique that you would teach like a 15-year-old girl who's got high anxiety?
Every single person I work with has to learn this. Yeah, this is a given.
Yeah.
I mean, to get really specific for those who are interested in this, you have a thought, and that thought goes through your neurons in your brain. And in the synapses, neurochemicals get released. The neurochemicals affect the part of your brain that creates an emotional response. It's a chemical reaction, the emotional response. It takes about 90 seconds for the body to process the emotion of anger. That's it. So why are we stuck in anger for so long? Because we're having the same thoughts, creating the same feelings that we don't like. So we go back into our mind and have the same kinds of thinking and perceptions, right? So part of it is building a new relationship to the mind. Part of it is learning how to focus our attention on the sensation. And every 1.5 seconds, you're like, oh, come back, feel, come back, feel. And that gets better over time, but you feel, and then you feel more calm, grounded, and present. So people go, oh, I thought breathing into that would kill me. Right, I feel more calm. And from that calm place, you now have access to wisdom. And wisdom is not the mind. Wisdom is different, right? Like for people listening, anything that I or anyone on these podcasts says that you go, oh my God, right, totally. You know it's wise. You know it's wise as soon as it's said. Why? Because none of us are the author of wisdom. There's an intelligence here. And when we can actually feel into the experience of what is true, there's a knowingness immediately. So we have access to wisdom, and we're all designed to be fluent in wisdom. But we're not, because we're totally merged compulsively with our mind. Our mind thinks something, we jump right at it. Because there's nothing more seductive to the mind than understanding, because then if I understand, I'll be okay. Even if the understanding is garbage and wrong, right? So, and this is what happens. So when we can actually feel in and we can process, the mind gets quieter. And that in that spaciousness, there's ways to hack into wisdom very simply, you know, and we have access to it. And it's evident, like if I say anything in the last whatever, you know, this conversation we've been having, that you go, oh yeah, right. Isn't it interesting that you didn't think it, but you knew it as soon as I said it?
Mm-hmm.
There's another intelligence we have that's greater than the mind. And our culture is like, just be in your head, don't be in your body. And this is why, look at our planet. Look at our planet. We're really sick because we're cut off from processing what's actually happening. We're not totally present. Everyone's compensating around it. And we're certainly not accessing a deeper wisdom.
Mm.
That's the deal.
Love that. And I love that when the kids really get that. Yeah, it's so
They
simple.
really get it.
They
Yeah.
just go in and just feel. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. So my next question is, why do you think there's so little on offer to support and guide teens?
There's so little, what was the word you said? So little?
Offer. There's
Oh.
so few people that work with teens. Like really, as I share about what Matilda and I are building here, people are like, oh my God, hallelujah. Thank God. We need this. We need it urgently. When's it going to be ready?
Right.
And so just curious.
I think because people just don't know how to fully, I mean, there's a lot, of course, I'm being in work, I know a lot of people who work with teens, but right, there should be a whole lot more considering they're the future.
Yeah.
Kind of a big deal, right?
Right.
And considering that we love them and we care about them and it's so freaking hard and like, where's the guidance? I think it's really about, if I just may throw this on the table here, about a spiritual initiation. Like people don't understand what's actually going on with reality or with a human being or with how this plays into humanity. People don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
If we got it, we'd be like, hold on, everyone needs to start learning this and we have to help teenagers get this. But people don't get it and everyone's so scattered and overwhelmed and confused that they're becoming short focused. I think a lot of programs that people go, I want to work with teens. I mean, oh my God, I have a lot of people come to me and be like, I want to start working with teens. Can you know, how'd you build your practice? A lot of those people who come to me are so far from the depth you need to truly connect with a teen because they're not working on themselves.
Okay.
They're being very external. And one thing, I mean, I love working with, well, people, but teens very much so because they're very quick to assess. They're very quick to not give you much of a chance, actually, if you're not really honoring and respecting and meeting them in the moment. Adults have all these ways to kind of like buffer that. Teens are like, no. And I think that's really intimidating for people. Because if a kid's like, yeah, you know, yeah, I'm drinking and I don't care, whatever, like it's not going to affect my sports and it doesn't matter and something, right? Let's say.
Right.
My response is like, awesome. I love how clear you feel about it. It's great. Tell me more. And I'm not going to try to change a thing about them. Yeah. I'm just like just being present with them and like exploring it. My job is to shine light from a lot of different angles. They go, huh, I didn't consider that. Well, it makes sense, but nah, not ready. Cool, great. Yeah. Awesome. Go for it, man. Like, do your thing, you know? But a lot of other people are so invested in the kid liking them or the kid changing something. It's like, oh my God, absolutely not. We have to help them connect to who they are and their essence. And that goes counter to, I'm supposed to help the kid do what? Change? No. There's nothing wrong with that kid. We have to help them be present with them. There's nothing wrong at all.
Michael. Woo, full body chills.
Right. Even if they're like angry and rageful or self-destructive or cutting, there's nothing wrong with them. We have to get present with them and help them learn how to see multidimensionally into their experience in a way that isn't, you know, anything but accessible to them. And I think so many people they're just so caught up in like, I need to get them to stop the behavior or change that behavior. I need to get them to understand. And what I say when I mentor therapists about this stuff, it's like, why do you care if they get it? Why do you care if they get it? That has nothing to do with them. That is your deal. You're caught up on them getting it. And that's going to get in the way of you connecting to them. I have to be okay if kids kill themselves. Now, do I want them to? No. Have I ever worked with someone who has? No. Have I worked with a lot of suicidal kids? Yes. Right? I care. But if I'm like, no, don't, no, dirt, the kid's like, oh, get out of my face. If I'm like, yeah, I get it. I get wanting to die. I tried to kill myself at 17. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
And then I can meet them in that. Yeah, it makes sense that you would think that and you feel hope, like, versus trying to get them to change that. It's like, well, hold on. We got to first meet them. That requires a lot of self-awareness. And I don't think a lot of people who aren't students of life, but they're just students of academia. They go to school, they get a degree, and going to work with teens. It's like, if you haven't done that work, you're not the kind of resource, and they get burned out. Oh my God, I work with so many people who are so burned out working with teens because they can't roll with how the teenager is. If they're apathetic and roll their eyes, I love that. I'm, like, I just appreciate where they're being. Most people are really bothered by that. I was like, it's great. And I say it, but I'm so serious about what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
Like basically what a kid wants is what adults want. And what we wanted as kids, we want people to be a yes to who we are. And it's like, no, I'm a yes to who you are, but I'm not a yes to who you're being right now. It's like, sorry, you can't play that card. You have to be a yes. You can say that behavior feels terrible to me. I'm a yes to who you are, and I get why you do it. It just was challenging for me. Yeah. Versus you need to stop that so I feel better. It's like, no, they don't. You can't yell at your sister. You can't yell at you can't hit them. You can't cut class. Yeah, they can. In fact, they just did. They actually just did. So don't say you can't. It's like, that's your deal. You can totally do that thing. You can vape all the time. You can, totally. Yeah. I have a question for you. And then I can go right into exploration to help them go, huh, yeah. And usually where we get is, yeah, that's pretty freaking stupid. And maybe it's, I'm not ready to stop. Great. Right. Or maybe it's like,
so you're shining the light on what their actions, the consequences of them, or
well, it's like sure. I mean, sure that, yeah, what the consequences are, but I'm always more interested in the causal forces. Term I use often, like, what are the subtle reasons of why you're drawn to it besides the addictive nature of that substance, for example? But
right.
There's so many little layers of like why we're drawn. Like if if there's just underlying anxiety and you get your vape on, all of a sudden you're like, huh, it's like, okay. So, and then I have ways of exploring that are just concise. Like, for example, like I said this before, so I'll say this one again. Like if there's two versions of you, and one version can actually take anxiety and learn how to very quickly work with it and process it, where then you feel ease and peace. And one version can and just needs something to like get over the anxiety, whether it's looking at your phone or doing something, right? Which is the one that would most likely feel more confident, empowered? Which is the one people would be more drawn to?
Love that.
But and then from there, it's going into like, what then is the reason why you believe, think, or act the way you do in a way that's not too heady, right? It has to be very simple. And I think a lot of adults, it's like too many words, you can be concise. Right. Kids are smart, they're going to get it, And so anyway, but ultimately, yeah, I think that's the deal. It's like kids are so ready for transformation. And I think at the same time, they're also desperate for feeling valuable and worthy. And those can seemingly conflict. And then that triggers adults. So you have to be okay with what is. It's hardcore, Yeah. But like when I work with a mother, let's say, a more recent example, so it's in my mind, whose daughter is suicidal. When I got the mother to a place, and the girl's been through, wilderness twice, therapeutic boarding school, blah, 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 all these therapists, all these medications, all this everything. And the girl's not doing well, right? And I just started working with them. But I've done this one a lot. When I help them, in this case, the mother, it's a single mother, and it's only child. So it's super intense.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
as intense as it gets. I mean, it's like that. Super intense is an understatement. It's really terrifying, painful, overwhelming to the max. When I help her look at how the resistance to what's happening is affecting her nervous system and her body and her relationship with her kid in a way that she can actually get, all right, well, I'm going to do everything I can to support my child in healing. And they will heal sooner, they'll heal much later, or they'll never heal, or they'll die. That's your range of possibilities. When I can help a parent actually surrender to that reality, it means they have to get past what all their friends might say. You have a right to be totally freaked out. Yeah, no, you have a right to be. But is it helping you connect with your daughter who doesn't feel a connection with you? No. So when they do that, sit with that intensity, I'm like, think about the intensity your daughter feels when she wakes up, goes to bed constantly. Who can meet her in that? Without trying to change her, just meet her so she's not so alone. And then from there, we can help her look at how she works with things. When I work with parents who are in this state, and I've worked with many, when they can finally, I don't have control here, but I have influence maybe. And how can I maximize my influence? Well, if you can integrate your nervous system and make room for your daughter and who she is right now, what's happening, you're going to be present with her in a new way. It's a tall order. Not every parent's willing to do that work. Most parents I work with who come to me, if they've been in that for a while, or they're ready for that, but not all. And some parents don't like me because they want me just to change their kid and they don't want to look at them. And, that's like that sometimes, right? It's how it goes. How it is. But obviously I try to help them, open to being with what is. Yeah. And because that's what we all have to learn.
Yeah, right? It's that surrender piece. Surrender.
Like, I mean, one of the elephants in the room, and this is a bit of a tangent, but we're all going to die.
Yeah.
But we don't want to even open to that at any point in our life. Even if we're in our 50s, people don't want to go there. If you go there, what winds up happening is you have more peace, more awareness, better priorities. You're more tuned into the preciousness of life. You can get over a lot of your BS. If you can be with fear and anxiety, be with what is. But a lot of people I just want the good stuff, the fun, the sparkles, the whatever. It's like, it's not going to work because you have to embrace the light and the dark. Yeah. That's a whole universe there, but that's, that's where we learn how to have more freedom and true empowerment.
Beautiful. So that leads nicely into my next question is, how do you see the future for the work that you do with teens? Do you think is very much similar what you're doing? Is there something that you see developing or growing?
Yeah. I've been working in private sessions, and I work, as a course director for Outward Bound and things like that, and all that stuff for a very long time. But the private sessions I do, I love, and it's great. But the future is actually shifting away from that for me. I'll work with people individually, but it's really about helping people come to this awareness more in a group environment.
Yeah.
And there's only one of me. So even though my team groups, which are kind of like, there's a parent component to team groups, and I'm not running them right now, but I will again at some point. When when I do those, they're so profoundly impactful. And the key is like training people in how to do that level that I'm doing,
Yeah.
which really comes from doing that for 30 years.
Yeah.
You know, it's part of it. You know, and also having been what I've been through and some of the trainings I've had, blah, blah, blah. But it's mostly, so on one level, it's training people how to work with teams. That's part of it. The other part of it is helping parents. That's one of the biggest. So I'm actually shifting already. I'm starting to shift away from sessions. I'm going to start doing podcasts and webinars to help parents. And some of those may be for teens, but I honestly think right now, yeah, I'll focus more on parents. I think that's faster and more effective.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
So there's that. And then
Are you
there might,
currently training people, or that's in the future?
it's in the future. I just, you know, I have a, you know, basically a 2 and a 4-year-old. So you know, I don't have the space right now for all that, you know, kind of, you know, maxed with everything. But that's why I'm lowering my client load actually, so I can start to do that. Right. But the other piece is something online, and I have a vision for it. And the vision, it's kind of elaborate, but in a nutshell, it's got, remember those books, the Choose Your Own Adventure books?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that. And it's where you can literally go to it and be like, you can look up virtually every situation that you're going to encounter. And you can look at the 3 different choices, 3 different like main choices of like not being very conscious, being somewhat conscious, being really conscious, and how that plays out. And then what it takes to move towards the conscious. So you can really be like, okay, so I have friends who are doing this. Great, look it up.
Yeah.
And it's right there. Because it's not cookie cutter, but there are certain trends.
Yes.
And if I want to be just cookie cutter, I could help a ton of people by just cookie cutter with the amount of experience that I've had, because I know the nuances.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one of the visions in helping teens.
Yeah.
And then of course training people, and then helping parents. I mean, you know, eventually some scale of teen groups again on some form, but that's it.
Wow. Beautiful. Wealth of amazing information, insights, and work you're doing. Is there anything else that you want to share with our audience before we wrap up?
A million things. Is there anything else to share? Well, I would say just on this topic, let's see.
Or we could do one.
It's really, I think, what's up?
No, go ahead.
It's really, you know, I think what's important is to at least be able to ask yourself the question, you know, the choices I'm making, they obviously work for you in some way. That's why you're making them. But if you think about who you want to become, is the person you want to become are they gonna make the same exact choices, or they make slightly different choices? I'm not saying that's a magic wand that it's easy to shift, but we have to be able to see bigger than just what your programming as a teenager is going to be. It's like just what's, you know, it's the more immediacy. And that's not a problem with you as teenagers. That's how your brain is designed to be most effective at this biological age. But it winds up grinding teenagers into the dirt or into anxiety. So if you can start going, yeah, no, I like it and I don't want to stop. And yeah, who I want to be would probably not be doing it this way. At least being able to open your perspective a little higher to just consider that you are in a process of evolving, or you're not. And the evolutionary process is basically, it can be very simple, just considering the evolution of yourself, you know, even if you don't make a change right now, as long as you're considering it, the power of that little bit of consciousness is incredibly powerful, even if you're not making a change right now. And if you do, well, yeah, awesome, great.
Right.
That's the one thing I'd say.
Beautiful. And so is that I'm just curious, is that something that you plant the seeds with the kids that you've been working with? You say that to them?
I've never said that in my life.
Okay.
I just was like listening, and that's what came up.
That's interesting.
But I think what I do tends to play on that.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah, of course it
Always,
does.
right. Planting the seed of evolving instead of, yeah.
Yeah, I might not use the word evolving, but I'm using it because this podcast is going to draw kids who are open to that idea,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
average kid evolving is like, evolving? That's not on my priority list right now, bro. You know, so
Right.
yeah,
Ah, amazing, amazing.
awesome.
So I think that wraps everything up for today.
Great.
I'm just so grateful for all your wisdom and everything that you've shared with us today. I've learned a lot. Really, really
Yeah,
beautiful work. Thank you for everything you do for the parents and the teens and the work that you will continue to do.
beautiful. Yeah, thanks for bringing it as you are.
Mhm.
All
Absolutely.
right.